Welcome back to Divine Redirect, where we explore the sacred detours that lead us home to ourselves. I'm Lucille, and in today's episode, we will be discussing when moving forward feels like going backwards. We're stepping into the quiet ache of beginning again, a journey that doesn't feel like a fresh start, but more like a do-over, where the path forward looks suspiciously like a road that was in your rearview mirror. But what if this seeming backwards motion isn't a setback, but a sacred realignment? What if the return is part of the becoming? There are times when a new beginning doesn't look or feel like progress. You recognize all the ways you have actually lost ground. Relationships, possessions, all the growth, effort, and time you invested in your life seem to have slipped away. Moving forward and beginning again may cause you to question the decisions you made to let it go and embark on this journey of redirection. But here's the truth. Starting over isn't moving backwards. It's a different kind of forward, one that asks you to see your journey through a spiritual lens. Moving forward is like traveling a road you have been on many times before. Only this time, you are not the driver. This time you can relax enough to see things you never noticed before. This time your focus will be on the journey, not the destination. So take a breath, settle in, and let's walk this forward path together. To begin, I want to give you a scripture to anchor you and to reflect on in this part of our journey of divine redirection. In this passage, God told the prophet Zechariah to speak these words to the people who were starting the project to begin the hard work of rebuilding and restoring the temple. The people were discouraged as they could not imagine how they could accomplish the task of starting over to bring the temple to its former splendor. This is what the prophet told them as they were starting over. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. These words are just as applicable to you and me as we begin to rebuild and restore our lives. Don't despise and become discouraged over starting over. Don't despise this new beginning because you might be starting from scratch. God is rejoicing over this new journey you are on. He is happy to see you are beginning the work of moving forward. Keep these words in mind so you will view this new beginning with your spiritual lenses. As in the previous videos, I will share with you a portion of my journey of redirection. After almost 2 years and losing my house and car, I was now living with my sister. I was using my daughter's car when I needed to get around, and except for my clothes and a few other personal possessions, I was starting over completely. Then I finally found a job in this second year of my redirection. In my earlier working career, I had worked in management for the federal government and in corporate America. Then I owned my own business. But since I closed my business, the only place that would even give me an interview and hire me was a Christian residential childcare facility in a small country town, working in a field I knew nothing about. This job was offering me about the same amount of money as I had made probably since my second job out of high school. It was embarrassing, but it was more than the nothing I was currently making. So despite the money, I was grateful to have a job. My entry-level position was to take care of the teenage girls living in the facility, cook for them, take them to their appointments, get them back and forth to school each day, and their overall care. There were times I sat outside the facility where I worked, crying and asking God, what am I doing here? I felt like I was sitting in a canoe facing forward and trying to move forward, but I was rowing backwards. But at some point, way in the back of my mind, I began to rationalize that God must be up to something, that no other door would open for me, even with my experiences, that I would end up in this place doing something I didn't want to do when I had the training and experience for so much more. In response to my cry, "What am I doing here?" God didn't give me a direct answer to the question, but he began to remind me of the words of the Apostle Paul in Galatians 4. "I have learned, whatever situation I am in, to be content." I soon came to realize that part of my role in this journey was to learn humility and contentment. So I started acting content even before I was feeling it. Now remember, statistically, I am homeless. So let me tell you about the job. This new job was in a residential facility, which meant that for the 4 days I was on duty, I had to live in the home with the teen girls. I ate there, I slept there for the 4-day rotation I was on duty. What I didn't know when I accepted the job was that because of the low pay and the inability to afford one's own housing, the agency also provided an on-campus apartment for the days I was off duty. So in essence, I was being housed during both my on-duty and off-duty periods. But then there's another seeming detour. Unfortunately, when I was hired, there were no available staff apartments. But nope, this was not a detour, but more of God's redirection. Listen to what happened. Because housing was part of my compensation, the agency housed me in one of the vacant 6-bedroom houses on the campus. My supervisor told me that this was something they had never done before. I was an entry-level employee, and I lived in a 6-bedroom house by myself for 4 years. As I share my journey of redirection, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Were there times that you could see God working, when there was no other explanation for what was happening? Or can you look back and recall times where you missed what God was doing in your redirection? So let me continue with my story. My living arrangement meant that I had no housing expenses, no rent or mortgage payments, no utility bills, no gas expense going back and forth to work, and except for the 3 days I was off duty, no food bills. What was your small beginning? A small paycheck, a tiny apartment, or worse, sleeping on someone's sofa? Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. The work of your moving forward. Your moving forward might look like you have taken a journey backwards. The salary, the industry, the location, the people God puts in my life to work with. Neither of those things appeal to me. But I was beginning to see God's directing hand all over my new journey. After I had been in this job for about 2 years, I was taking my daily walk, which I did while the girls were in school. A coworker joined me and asked me, "Have you considered going back to school?" It seemed like that question dropped down straight from the mouth of God. She also told me that it was the last day to apply for a scholarship from the agency. I hurriedly got my papers to the HR office and began my journey back to school. By the time I retired from this agency, I had earned 2 masters and had my doctorate. The nature of the job had allowed me to do my online studies and homework while the girls were in school. Then God began to redirect my course again. After 4 years in this position at this job, a new director came to the agency. She met with my supervisor and others and wanted to know why I was allowed to live in that house. She then met with me and politely told me that I had a certain time to move out. My supervisor and the others wanted me to protest and complain. They had their own personal reasons for this. But by now I knew that everything that was happening for me was being orchestrated by God. So of course, the new director was also being orchestrated by God when it came to my journey. God had already prepared me for this move. He had already let me know it was time to make a move. So I was fully prepared for the director's decision. I told her that I had already made plans to move and had a contract on a house. I told her what my closing date was. And because I knew I would be moving, I had also applied for another position in the agency that would allow me to go home every day. Now, are you seeing this? God placed me in a job that I would not have chosen, making less money than I normally would accept. In a small country town I would not have chosen to live in, doing something I would not have chosen to do as a career. This is divine redirection, my friend. God's redirection allowed me to save almost all of my salary, pay off my car, get my degrees, buy my new home. I could not have come up with such a wonderful plan if I had hired a career and a financial coach. I don't know what or how your journey forward has been, but trust me when I say, if the divine is directing you on your new path, this detour in your life, then you can trust him that even though it might seem that you are moving backwards, he is taking you to a new forward. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work of you moving forward begin. Not only did God restore to me the years the locust had eaten, as he promised his prophet Joel and his people Israel, he also comforted me concerning his faithfulness. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. God's plan for me was not just to restore material possessions. His calling and plan for me was to impact the lives of so many teen girls and ladies, young girls who were pregnant and had to learn to move forward, others who had been rescued from sexual exploitation and needed to rediscover themselves with a new beginning. Then later, as I ran the program for mothers of young children who had lost their jobs and became homeless, I was able to let them know about a God who can redirect their lives in ways they could not imagine. I would like to offer you some thoughts concerning your own journey. Some thoughts you can respond to even if your life hasn't been redirected. Have you been able to recognize the hand of God in what seemed like a backwards season? How might a divine perspective on timing and growth reshape the way you see setbacks? What is one area in your life right now where you can choose to trust the process instead of the pace? And how might you reframe going backwards as part of a larger cycle of your growth? I want to thank you for joining me in this tender space today on Divine Redirect. If starting over feels like going backwards, remember, even the tide must retreat before it gathers strength to rise again. What may feel like regression could be the soul's way of reclaiming and remembering something you forgot you possessed, something important to reclaim as you move forward. So take your time, honor the discomfort, and trust that the divine redirect isn't taking you back, it's taking you deeper. And if this conversation encourages you, I'd love for you to invite a friend who might need it too. Subscribe to my channel and leave a review so more people can find this space of hope and renewal. In our next conversation on Divine Redirect, we will discuss mirror moments, living authentically. Since we're on this journey of redirection and becoming, it might be a good time to align who you are with who God created you to be. We'll explore what it means to shed the roles we've outgrown, step unapologetically into who we have become, speak from the voice that has become our own. We will recognize that sometimes the path forward is a detour to something truer. And until next time, may you trust what's unfolding, even when you can't see the whole map. May you feel the quiet hand of grace on your shoulder, and may the detour lead you somewhere holy.